Introduction: A Sky in Flames and a Land in Darkness. A very, very long time ago, about 66 million years ago, the world was a place of wild and dangerous contrasts, where the heart of the earth pulsed with primordial fury. Imagine a planet where the sun, a disk of molten gold, burned mercilessly during the day, weaving veils of heat that danced like golden serpents over the vast plains. The nights were cold as the breath of a dragon asleep in forgotten caves, where stars flickered like the eyes of ancestors, watching over the icy silence. It was the end of the age of dinosaurs, a time of humid forests that whispered secrets in leaves like intertwined hands, and vast shallow seas that lapped at the shores with salty and lazy tongues. But the sky was not just a serene blue mantle. It carried secrets of fire and fury, woven into threads of clouds that writhed like restless souls. Volcanoes roared in distant lands, spewing lava like the burning blood of torn earthly veins, and shooting stars streaked the horizon like arrows of flaming light, tracing paths of destiny on a black carpet of infinity. In this world on the brink of chaos, where light and shadow intertwined in an eternal dance of creation and destruction, Anhangu was born, the spirit of the fire from the sky. Anhangu was not a common dinosaur, mere flesh and bone molded by the raw earth, nor an ancestral bird with feathers that captured the wind like lovers capture whispers. He was a mythical being, a winged entity woven from dancing flames and iridescent scales that shimmered like jewels forged in the heart of a star. His vast wings unfolded like those of a giant pterosaur, Anhanguera, as the sages of the future in their poetic wisdom would name him. Translucent membranes that quivered like ascending smoke veils, carrying the aroma of sweet ashes and promises of rebirth. His eyes burned like embers in a divine forge, deep pools of liquid amber where glimpses of distant galaxies swirled in hypnotic spirals. His tail writhed like a fire serpent, sinuous and graceful, leaving trails of sparks that dissipated in the air like confetti from a celestial carnival. And his crested beak, adorned with rounded protuberances like crowns of solidified lava, opened to release roars that echoed like poetic thunder, verses of a cosmic symphony that made the mountains tremble in reverence. Anhangu carried within him the gift of celestial fire, not the destructive fire of the earth, voracious and blind like a hungry beast that devours forests in nights of rage, but the fire that illuminates the darkness with a soft glow, warms weary bones like a mother's ancestral embrace, and transforms the ordinary into the sublime, like a poet's breath that ignites souls with words. But how did he come into the world, this being of flaming wings and stellar heart? This is the legend we will weave now, thread by thread, in a simple and moving way, like a story whispered to the night wind, where every breeze carries stanzas of mystery and wonder. The legend begins with the great darkness, an ebony mantle that fell upon the world like the wings of a giant raven, weaving shadows that swallowed the light and froze the pulse of life. Heavy clouds, swollen like broken hearts, covered the sky, blocking the sun and leaving the earth in a limbo of ashes and whispers. Plants withered like rejected lovers, their leaves curling in silent laments, petals falling like jade tears on the arid soil. The great herbivores, like triceratops with horns that cut the air like ivory blades sculpted by time, groaned with cold and hunger, their massive bodies trembling like out-of-tune harps in the wind. And the predators, the tyrannosaurs with fangs that gleamed like dripping moonlit blood, hunted with desperate fury, roars echoing like verses of a tragic epic in a theater of bones and mud. At the heart of a volcanic island in what is now ancient Brazil, a floating emerald jewel in a turbulent sapphire sea, lived the spirit of the sea, called Thylor. Thylor was vast and deep, a colossus of waves that rose like liquid cathedrals, made of currents that danced in ancestral rhythms, deep blues where secrets of shipwrecks and lost treasures intertwined like algae in an eternal embrace. But he felt empty, an ocean without stars to reflect, yearning for light that could penetrate his depths like rays of hope in an abyss of solitude. One night, as the island's volcano trembled like a giant awakening from a feverish dream, A flaming star. Not a common star, a mere cold point of light in the firmament, but a wandering comet carrying the fire of the gods, a lance of plasma woven in the furnaces of the cosmos, collided with the sky in a spectacle of glory and terror. The comet did not crash to the earth with blind brutality. It fragmented in the air like a poem shattered into stanzas of light, and a piece of its essence descended like a serpent of light, graceful and inevitable, plunging into the ocean around the island with a sigh of vapor that rose like prayers to the sky. From that unlikely union, sky fire, wild and ethereal like a passionate lover, and seawater, calm and enveloping like a maternal lap, Anhangu was born. He emerged from the waves not wet and subdued, but dry and flaming, like a spark gaining wings in an instant of poetic miracle, his scales crackling with the hymn of a stellar birth. His first cries were flames that danced in the air like red silk ballerinas, forming auroras that unfurled in the sky like ribbons of a cosmic bow, illuminating the entire island in tones of ruby and flaming sapphire. The air filled with a perfume of ozone and burnt salt, an elixir that made the leaves of ancestral palms whisper in ecstasy. Thalor, upon seeing him hover over the waves like a winged god forged in dreams, felt something new. Reverence, a tremor in the depths of his currents like the first verse of an oceanic ballad. "Who are you, son of sky and sea, weaver of light amid the darkness?" he asked, his voice grave like the roar of waves breaking on coral reefs, echoing like underwater thunder. Anhangu, still young and unstable, his flames flickering like candles in the wind of an inner storm, replied with a hiss that sounded like the crackle of a campfire telling secrets to the moonlight. "I am Anhangu, the one who brings fire from on high winged serpent of eternal embers. I am the spirit of flames that have not yet warmed, but promise to dance with the wind and sea in a symphony of heat and light." From that instant, as if destiny wove an invisible thread between them, Thalor vowed to guide him through the veils of the world. And together they began the journey that would illuminate the planet forever, an odyssey of fire and poetry, where every flight was a verse and every flame a rhyme. Chapter 1. The Awakening of the Celestial Flames. Anhangu was restless like a river of lava seeking the sea, his membranous and translucent wings. Veils of smoke, woven with threads of aurora borealis, carried him gliding over seas that stretched like undulating sapphire carpets, and forests where the ancestral treetops intertwined like lovers' fingers in an Edenic garden. He touched the air with claws sharp as polished obsidian blades, and where he passed sparks fell like star seeds, igniting soft fires that warmed the cold soil with a gentle embrace, transforming the bare earth into cradles of poetic heat. At first, they were only small embers, pulsing rubies in the night's breast, enough for a small reptile, with scales that gleamed like copper coins under the moonlight, to warm its body and run faster, its paws leaving trails of vapor like verses written in damp sand. But Anhangu knew, in some recess of his flaming essence, that his power was greater, an ocean of fire contained in a drop of comet, yearning to spill into rivers of light. Thalor, the guardian of the depths, with a voice that echoed like bells submerged in coral cathedrals, led him to the Bay of Shadows, a place where the sea was black and icy like the heart of an extinct star, lifeless. Only the silence of an unfinished poem hovering over waters that lapped the rocks with icy tongues. "Here, son of wandering flames, awaken your gift like a poet awakens the sleeping muse," he said, his waves rising in graceful arcs like inverted rainbows. Anhangu closed his eyes, those amber pools where galaxies swirled in eternal dances, and invoked the comet's memories. Visions of distant suns, balls of plasma singing hymns of nuclear fusion, stellar volcanoes exploding in distant galaxies like bouquets of cosmic flowers blooming in infinite void. He spread his wings in a broad and majestic gesture, like a peacock fan woven of lava, and from his mouth poured a controlled jet of fire, a tamed dragon's breath in verses of heat. The air warmed like a lover awakening, and soon a bonfire was born on the beach, crackling with wild joy, its flames dancing like nymphs at a midsummer fire, casting shadows that waltzed over the waves. The bay's creatures, who had previously huddled in the depths like secrets kept in pearl shells, emerged little by little, drawn by the silent song of the heat. A group of ancestral fish, with silvery scales that shimmered like blades of moonlight forged in liquid silver, swam to the surface in a graceful procession, their bodies cutting the water like mercury arrows. They warmed in the tepid waters created by the fire, a thermal bath woven of elemental magic, and their bodies glowed with an inner sheen like lanterns lit in an underwater cave. For the first time, the bay echoed with bubbles of contentment, not silences of fear, mute echoes of a frozen world, but soft bubbles of gratitude like children's laughter playing in starlit puddles. Anhangu smiled, a gesture that made his scales ripple like waves of heat in a desert of wings, feeling the pulse of connection like the rhythm of a shared heart between sky and sea. Fire is not just destruction, a beast roaring in devoured forests, he thought, his inner flames whispering like leaves in the wind. It is heat that embraces, a mantle of light woven to envelop cold souls in a cocoon of poetic rebirth. But not everything was as simple as a haiku whispered at dawn. The cold southern wind, a messenger of ancestral winters, extinguished the flames quickly, blowing them out like candles in a storm of icy sighs, and Anhangu grew tired, his wings weighing like unfulfilled promises. Thalor warned him with the wisdom of past eras, his voice a rumbling of waves like drums of an underwater ritual. Your power comes from balance, son of dancing embers. If you give too much, you will consume yourself like a dying star, exploding in an ephemeral supernova of glory, leaving only ashes as echoes of a lost poem. Thus, Anhangu learned to measure his gift with the precision of a cloud sculptor. A spark here for the seabirds, whose feathers bristled like pages of an ancient book in the wind, a blaze there for the algae beginning to bloom, green filaments unfurling like mermaids' hair awakening from sleep. Over time, like a garden blooming from a lava seed, the bay transformed into a paradise of poetic contrasts. Colorful corals rose from the bottom like submerged Gothic cathedrals. Red and orange ramifications intertwined like veins of a flaming heart, capturing the heat in sinuous embraces. Aquatic flowers painted the surface with crimson and gold petals, floating like dreamboats on a sea of whispers. Anhangu had created his first living bonfire, an altar where fire and water kissed in an eternal dance of vapor and light. Expanded poetic descriptions. Imagine the bay now a living painting by divine hands. Waters steaming lightly like a soup of stars boiling in shell cauldrons, red and orange corals intertwined like lovers in a tango of embers, pulsing with the rhythm of a volcanic heart. Fish dance in heated circles, their scales tracing silver arabesques in the deep blue, like underwater calligraphy of a lost poet. Smaller pterosaurs land on black rocks, polished like obsidian on an ancient altar, warming wings that unfold like sails of ghost ships, and the air smells of burnt salt and sweet smoke, a perfume evoking memories of campfires around which ancestors told sagas. Anhangu hovers above, a winged silhouette against the twilight sky, his tail writhing in the wind like a living ruby viper, whispering songs that calm the rebellious waves, transforming their roar into a flaming harp melody. Meanwhile, a subplot unfolds like a lyrical interlude. A young plesiosaur named Sira, with a neck long like a crane's arm of clouds wounded by a storm that whipped the sea like a furious poet, with his quill finds refuge in the heated bay. Her scales, once bright as wet emeralds, now dull like fallen leaves in a rainy autumn. Strange winged one, weaver of light amid chaos, what are you? Vision of fire in a world of ice? She asks with a trembling voice, a gurgling whisper like bubbles in a stream of tears. Anhangu descends in a graceful spiral, his wings folding like pages of a sacred tome, and warms her wound with a gentle paw, its claws tracing runes of heat on her skin. I am the fire that heals, a flame that whispers promises of dawns in endless nights, he replies, his voice a soft crackle like dry leaves in a hearth of tales. Sirah, healed like a flower blooming after frost, vows loyalty with eyes gleaming like lakes reflecting distant bonfires, becoming his first companion in the waters, an ally in a tapestry of intertwined elements. Chapter 2. The Enemies of Heat. Not everyone in the ancient world received Anhangu with open arms like the sea welcoming the river. Some saw him as a threat, a discordant verse in a ballad of shadows. In the depths of the earth, where mountain roots intertwined like bony fingers in an eternal fist, reigned Terek, the lord of cold shadows. Terek was a dense and relentless spirit, made of ice that stretched like quartz veins in a cave of silence, and darkness that curved like cloaks of moonless night. He loved the icy silence, a poetic void where every ice crystal was a stanza of untouched purity. And for him, fire was uncontrolled chaos, a beast that melted the stability of forms with its wild dance, awakening lazy creatures in an illusory heat nap. The cold forges the resilient, sculpting souls into diamonds of patience, he proclaimed, his voice a cutting whisper like winter wind blades, sending arctic winds that froze everything in his reach, transforming rivers into fragile glass sculptures and leaves into translucent jewels of farewell. When Terek's shadows, long and sinuous like ebony serpents, reached Anhangu's bay, the flames receded like shy lovers before a stern gaze. The corals, once vibrant like pulsing hearts in a sea chest, paled to ghostly gray tones, and the fish dove in panic, their scales trembling like out-of-tune harps in a symphony of fear. Anhangu roared, a sound that tore the air like poetic thunder freeing imprisoned verses, and his breath formed a wall of fire in the air, flames rising like towers of liquid ruby defending a castle of heat. Why, shadows woven of eternal ice, why do you deny us the comfort of a flaming embrace? He implored the icy wind, his voice a lament echoing like a star's cry falling in plasma tears. Terek, invisible like a ghost in a foggy mirror, mocked with a laugh sounding like cracking ice. Because fire burns like a fleeting love, I preserve like time in its cold claws. You are an intruder in this world of sea and stone, a rebellious spark in a poem of quietude. Thalor, enraged like an ocean awakening from a calm dream, raised barriers of waves curving like liquid cathedral arches to block the invading cold. But Terek was clever like a snow fox on a white plain. He allied with Vortia, the queen of icy winds, an entity of cutting gusts living in the northern mountains, where peaks rose like teeth of a sleeping dragon in a sky of torn clouds. Vortia was a dancer of frozen hurricanes, her winds weaving veils of frost that froze the air into delicate crystals like winter lace. Together they planned to extinguish the bay completely, a plot whispered in echoing caves like verses of a dark conspiracy. Vortia sent blizzards that smothered the bonfires like cold hands over a singing mouth, and Terek spread them like a plague of white silence, covering the world in a shroud of poetic snow. Anhangu, however, did not bow like a flower before the gale. He was fire, untamable like a poem refusing to be silenced. He flew to the heart of the Cretaceous forest, a green labyrinth where ancient trees, giant conifers with trunks like columns of forgotten temples, murmured secrets in languages of rustling leaves. There he found the ancient tree, a living relic that had survived past winters like a sage collecting scars like medals of poetic battles, its trunk marked by rings telling sagas of lost eras. Son of flames that dance like fleeing stars, said the ancient tree with a crackling voice like pages of an ancient tome turning in the wind. The secret lies in union, an embrace of elements where opposites become intertwined verses. Fire alone consumes like a devouring passion, united with sea and air. It endures like an epic engraved in eternity. Inspired, like a bard touched by the muse in a moonlit clearing, Anhangu called Thalor, whose waves responded with a joyful roar, and asked for his help in a pact sealed with sparks and foam. Together they created an ancestral ritual. Thalor shaped whirlpools of vapor rising like columns of smoke in a god's incense, protective shells to contain the heat like crystal chalices. Anhangu fed it with his inner fire, a breath of life transforming the air into a symphony of crackles. And even Vortia was invited, not as an enemy with ice claws, but as a partner in a dance of reconciliation, her winds called to blow with gentleness. Surprisingly, Vortia faltered like a cloud before the rising sun, her icy essence trembling with the heat of a new possibility. She saw the beauty of the heated bay, corals blooming like roses in a melted winter garden, and felt a shiver of desire, a poetic tingling like the first verse of an unexpected love. Perhaps heat makes my winds more alive, weaving them into harps of warm breeze instead of frost blades, she admitted, her voice a whisper melting in the air like snow at the sun's touch. Terak, seeing the alliance form like roots intertwining distant soils, retreated to his deep caves, a shadowy giant swallowed by his own darkness. Thus, the first pact was sealed under a sky opening in truce auroras. Vortia's winds now warm like lovers' breaths, carrying sparks like seeds of poetry instead of ice like prison chains. The bay prospered even more, an oasis of balance where fire and cold kissed in dancing vapors, and Anhangu gained his first unexpected ally, a once hostile queen transformed into a verse of harmony. Poetic expansion, deep dialogues between Anhangu and Sira during vigil nights, where the sea reflects flames like a mirror of dreams. The fire in you is like a wild serpent, writhing in ecstasy and fury, says Sira, her neck arching like a moonbow. I tame it with sky wings, weaving its dance into ballads that warm the void, he replies, his scales pulsing like beats of a stellar heart. Minor battles unfold like epic interludes, Anhangu flying against icy gusts, his wings cutting the air like light knives, scales shining like boiling lava melting the ice in the air into a rain of liquid diamonds falling like a god's repentant tears. Sensory descriptions flourish, the crackle of flames mixed with sea salt, a symphony evoking shell bells played by capricious winds. The smell of ozone after a blaze fresh like a passionate storm's breath intertwined with the perfume of warmed algae sweet like honey from volcanic flowers. Lyrical subplot, a wandering Tyrannosaur named Raxor, with fangs dripping like black ivory waterfalls and eyes burning with primordial hunger, is drawn to the bay's heat like a moth to a lantern of secrets. He attacks seeking easy prey, his roar a thunder tearing the night like an unrhymed verse of rage. Anhangu confronts him not with blind fury, but with a vision woven of flaming illusions, showing him bonfires that cook prey effortlessly, flames dancing like benevolent spirits around successful hunts. Raxor, impressed like a warrior touched by prophecy, halts, his heavy breath like war drums. You transform destruction into gift, fire that sings instead of devours, he murmurs. Anhangu replies with a breath warming the surrounding air. Balance is the perfect rhyme, where predator and flame coexist in a poem of survival. Raxor, touched, becomes an earthly guardian, his massive shadow patrolling the beaches like a protective verse in an elemental epic. Chapter 3. The Journey to the Great Volcano. With the bay secure like a nest woven of flames and waves, Anhangu dreamed higher, his visions unfolding like wings in a sky of infinite possibilities. He saw in daydreams, swirling like nebulae in his flaming chest, a world illuminated by eternal fires, volcanoes warming continents like God's forges, bonfires connecting skies and lands in a web of poetic light, where every eruption was a creation verse, and every ember a punctuation of hope. I must spread my gift like star seeds in a cosmic garden, he declared to Thaler, his voice a joyful crackle like fireworks in an ancestral celebration. The spirit of the sea nodded, his waves curving in arcs of approval like liquid rainbow bridges, but warned with the gravity of an underwater oracle. The journey will be arduous, through stormy skies howling like ghost choirs, and lands where shadows stretch like carpets of doubt. Winged predators will see you as a rival, a flame to be eclipsed, or as prey, a banquet of ephemeral light. Anhangu departed at dawn when the rising sun painted the horizon with brushstrokes of pink and molten gold, carrying a comet feather, a flaming talisman light as a muse's sigh that could ignite fire sources, where it fell sprouting flames like flowers in a desert of darkness. His path led him through the forest of storms, a green labyrinth where black clouds piled like herds of shadowy elephants, blocking the sun in an oppressive veil of mystery, and rivals like other pterosaurs lurked in the canopies, eyes sharp as shadow daggers, But Anhangu feared not. He was fire, and fear was mere fuel for his wings. He sang, a melody rising like incense smoke, winged verses intertwining crackle notes and whisper, and his voice attracted allies like bees to divine nectar. Small flying reptiles, ancestors of birds with feathers capturing wind like dream nets, followed him in a graceful escort, guiding him through ascending currents swirling like dervish dances in the sky. In an open clearing, bathed by sun rays filtered like gold threads through a necklace of leaves, he encountered a herd of hungry hadrosaurs, their textured skins like ancient leather marked by epic journeys, led by a wounded male whose roar was a hoarse lament like wind in empty canyons. The leader, named Boulder with horns curving like carved ivory crescents, bellowed against the winged intruder, creature of fire, weaver of warm illusions. What do you seek in our territory, where hunger is our only queen and cold our scepter? Anhangu, hovering like a living constellation, let a spark fall from the feather, a gift of light descending like a miniature shooting star. A bonfire sprouted from the soil like a rose of flames blooming in ruby petals, and the hadrosaurs warmed, their massive bodies absorbing the heat like thirsty earth drinking poetic rain, wounds healing with the invigorating touch that turned pain into distant memory. Boulder, grateful like a king touched by divine mercy, lowered his head in reverence that made the earth tremble slightly. You are the spirit of the fire from the sky, a flame singing hymns of life in a world of icy silences. We will defend you on land, like roots protect the flower in storms. The journey continued across exposed plains, vast like blank pages of an ancestral atlas, where ankylosaur herds grazed with tails whipping the air like patience metronomes. Anhangu created itinerant bonfires, heat beacons rising like light sentinels in a nomadic procession, and the herds followed, migrating to warmer lands like pilgrims seeking a promised paradise. Along the way, challenges arose like unexpected stanzas in a poem. A volcanic eruption, furious like a forgotten god's jealousy, opened ravines of lava gurgling like monster throats, swallowing newly lit sparks in a banquet of wildfire. Anhangu dove into the ravines without hesitation, using his wings as a living shield, membranes quivering like battle flags in an elemental war, guiding the controlled fire to the other side like a shepherd leading ember sheep. His tail coiled around hot rocks, marking it with lava veins like victory tattoos. But he emerged stronger, reborn from the flames, with magma veins running under the scales like liquid poetry rivers in a winged verse body. After countless moons, or what seemed like moons in ancient time, cycles of light and shadow woven on a loom of constellations, Anhangu reached the edge of the fiery world, an immense crater, the cradle of the great volcano, a sacred void where the ground curved like a divine hand waiting for an offering. It was an empty place, a smoking depression where the wind howled like a cosmic widow's lament, echoes of loneliness reverberating on black rock walls. Here the eternal fire will be born, a pulsing heart beating with the universe's rhythm, he murmured, his voice a whisper mingling with the earth's restless hiss. But to fill the cradle with his gift's essence, he needed more than his solitary feather, a mere comet whisper. He needed to invoke the original comet, call the sky to pour its poetic fury in a flood of light. Chapter 4. The call of the comet Anhangu climbed the cliff surrounding the crater, the stellar peak, whose summit brushed the clouds like a lover's fingers touching a celestial bride's veil. A place where rarefied air sang hymns of altitude. Up there, under a sky studded with stars winking like God's eyes in vigil, he prepared for the ritual, his body tense like a harp string about to vibrate. Thalor had sent foam messengers, iridescent bubbles rising like soap orbs woven of dreams, to aid him in his dance. Vortia blew hot currents swirling like ballerina skirts in a wind hall. Anhangu danced in the air, his movements fluid like flames in a gentle wind, wings beating in rhythms echoing distant supernova's pulse, singing an ancient song learned from the ancient tree, verses rising like smoke from an incense altar. O skies of embers, God's furnaces where stars forge light swords, O sea of waves, cradle of secrets where shells guard creation echoes. Let the comet's mantle fall, a rain of fire woven in threads of eternity, that the world's veins fill with light, lava rivers singing rebirth hymns, and Anhangu, the winged spirit of dancing embers, illuminate creation with flame verses. His words resounded like poetic thunders freeing an inspiration storm, and the stars responded in a celestial chorus, blinking in unison like an ecstatic audience. A comet appeared on the horizon, not a timid drizzle of sparks, but a celestial cascade crashing like an epic poem in plasma verses, quickly filling the crater with a roar that was music and fury intertwined. Turbulent lavas churned in the cradle, forming fire rivers lapping the margins like a thirsty dragon's tongues. Magma waves swirling in hypnotic spirals. Creatures from all corners, flying pterosaurs with wings cutting the air like silk scissors. Primitive land reptiles whose steps echoed like drum beats in an ancestral march, gathered to witness the miracle, wide eyes reflecting the spectacle like admiration mirrors. The great volcano was born, red and eternal like a god's ring ruby, home to flaming spirits Anhangu conjured from his essence, light beings dancing like lava fairies in a heat ballet. But the ritual, this poetic offering to the cosmos, exacted a bitter price like the gall of a dying star. Anhangu expended much of his inner fire, his soul's core ebbing like sand in a melting glass hourglass, and his body weakened, wings wilting like a flower's petals exposed to merciless wind. He fell at the crater's edge, a flaming plume tumbling in slow motion, his form dissipating into smoke rising like an unanswered prayer, spiraling in translucent veils of farewell. "Fear not, spirit of eternal flames," said Boulder the hadrosaur, approaching with steps making the earth whisper in reverence, his massive body a walking mountain of loyalty. "Your legacy burns in the flames, a fire that does not extinguish but multiplies in warmed hearts." Indeed, where Anhangu had touched the sky with his wings, volcanic springs burst like liquid poetry fountains, and lava rivers were born, snaking across the continent like a titan's awakening veins, fertilizing soils with ashes that were seeds of new life. Thalor arrived like a savior from the depths, his waves rising in a gentle swell, carrying Anhangu's exhausted body back to the natal island, a foam and salt cradle. There he sheltered him in an obsidian cave, black walls polished like night mirrors where flame reflections danced like ghosts of past bonfires, and Anhangu rested, regenerating slowly like a poem rewritten stanza by stanza. Vortia, now a friend forged in unexpected alliances, brought warm winds blowing like comfort breaths, nourishing the inner embers with breeze whispers. Tarek, touched by the ritual's magnitude like a hermit touched by a divine vision, offered cool shadows to balance the excess heat, a darkness mantle now protective instead of oppressive, romantic subplot woven in lyre threads. During the journey, Anhangu meets a female pterosaur named Lyra, with silver wings capturing light like moonlight prisms, graceful like a sylph in a cloud garden. She falls in love with his fire during a storm lashing the sky like a poet in fury, lightning dancing like Zeus's whips. "You fly like the sky in flames, a living constellation igniting my wings with desire," she says, her eyes reflecting his blazes like amber lakes. "Together, we burn the darkness in a tapestry of intertwined light and shadow," he replies, his tail brushing hers in a touch releasing sparks like passion confetti. They have symbolic children, auroras dancing on the horizon like ghosts of their love, color ribbons painting the sky in ruby and sapphire tones, whispering promises of eternal unions. Lyrical expansion. Scenes of epic flights over seas stretching like blue ink oceans under a cloud brush. Dialogues with Raxir on balance between predator and fire, where the Tyrannosaur reflects, "My fangs are verses of hunger, but your heat transforms them into songs of satiety." Descriptions of controlled eruptions fertilizing soils, lava flowing like red wine rivers in a god's feast, leaving behind fields of ashes sprouting obsidian flowers gleaming. Chapter 5. The Children of Anhangu. While Anhangu rested in his obsidian cocoon, The world transformed like a butterfly chrysalis bursting into glory wings. The volcanoes he had kindled branched into intricate networks, fire veins warming entire forests like a sun's embrace on winter days, turning humid jungles into dancing vapor gardens. Lava rivers solidified into fertile lands, black surfaces gleaming like night mirrors, where stars reflected in basalt puddles and new creatures evolved from the ashes. Turtles with heat-resistant shells bone, and horn shields gleaming like mythical heroes' armors. Fire serpents crawling in hot ashes, sinuous bodies leaving ember trails like an elemental painter's scribbles. Dinosaurs, those titans of scales and roars, learned to coexist with fire like lovers learning to dance. Some adapted fireproof scales shimmering like jewels forged in furnaces, retaining heat like cherished memories. Others migrated to geothermal springs formed by his blessings, warm water lakes bubbling like benevolent spell cauldrons. Anhangu awoke changed, reborn from his sleep depths like Aphrodite emerging from sea foam, no longer an unstable spark flickering in the wind, but an intrinsic part of sky and earth, his scales now intertwined with constellation threads. His children were the flames personified in a poetic family. The eternal lava river flowing endlessly like an interminable verse rhyming with the planet's pulse. The Aurora crater, a natural amphitheater where lights danced reflecting the flaming sky like a dream mirror. And the deep volcano, guardian of burning secrets, its open mouth like a bard telling submerged magma sagas. He taught the creatures to respect fire with a father's tenderness narrating fables, warm with gratitude, as if each ember were a star gift. Do not waste, for it is the Father's breath, the breath transforming ashes into flowers and darkness into dawn. But legends, woven in ancestral orality threads, tell of rebellions arising like dissonances in a harmonic symphony. Some lesser spirits, jealous like envious shadows of light, tried to extinguish the flames with cold rains falling like jealous gods' tears. Anhangu faced them in epic danced confrontations, transforming them into harmless ashes floating like snow plumes in a warm wind, dissipating into nothing more than poetic echoes. He created guardians like protective verses, the flame salamanders, minor spirits with red scale bodies dancing to fan bonfires. Their movements a choreography of spins and leaps like leaves in an autumn blaze. And the phoenixes of the heights, luminous birds with plasma feathers illuminating dark nights reborn from their own ashes in eternal poetry cycles. Vivid battles unfold like heroic cantos, Anhangu diving into enemy-created icy lakes, waters closing like kraken jaws absorbing the cold into his flaming chest, like a martyr drinking poison to save the flock emerging with pure blue flames, cutting the air like burning sapphire blades. Dialogues with animals bloom like flowers in volcanic soil. A velociraptor with claws tracing sharp lines in the air, like commas in a hunt sentence begging heat for its leaf-wrapped eggs, learning to hunt near bonfires without destroying them, turning instinct into balanced art. Subplot in epic tones. Sira and Lyra's adventure, exploring heated seas where waves curve like cathedral arches, discovering volcanic islands born of the ritual peaks, smoking like gods' censers, covered in flowers blooming in solidified lava petals, red like heroes' blood. Chapter 6. The Prophecy of the Great Impact. With the world warmed like a maternal light womb, Anhangu foresaw a great change, visions dancing in his flames like ghosts of intertwined futures. In future eras, Skyfire will test Earth's children like a poet tests his rhymes in inspiration storms. There will be impacts tearing time's veil like sacred book pages, extinctions whispering farewell in collective ashes. But rebirth will prevail like a phoenix raising hope wings from the depths. He engraved this prophecy on volcanic rocks along lava rivers, etchings gleaming like inner ember-lit runes. So future generations, humans, much later, with metal quills and star dreams, could read and remember the poetic balance. Vortia and Terak joined him in elemental wisdom circles, forming the circle of elements like a bard quartet singing sea, sky, earth, and shadow harmonies. Thalor, the unshakable anchor, kept the sea fluid like free verse. Together, they shaped continents with titan hands, volcanoes pulsing like hearts in a geological symphony, lava rivers tracing destiny maps. The legend culminates with Anhangu returning to the stellar peak, his wings folding like stage curtains after the grand finale, but promising to return in times of darkness like a verse recalled amid silence. I am the fire in your veins, running like unwritten poetry, the ember in your wings igniting dream flights. Call me with a solitary flame's whisper, and I will ascend like a comet answering the void's call. Conclusion. The Flaming Legacy. This legend of Anhangu, woven in fire and verse threads, reminds us that fire is light penetrating darkness, transformation forging the new from ancient ashes, and hope warming existences cold. 66 million years later, his volcanoes still roar like creation thunders. Auroras dance like lost love's spirits. Let us respect it as ancient creatures did, with poetic gratitude, for in every spark pulses a world dreaming in flames.